I love a great idea. I love that moment when an idea hits and your brain immediately starts spinning, trying to turn it into something bigger, something better, something more complete. The hard part is a great idea does not automatically come with the time to see it through. Life gets busy, priorities compete, and no matter how many ideas show up, there are still only so many hours in a day. And for me, the ideas never really stop. Sometimes it's a new podcast topic. Sometimes it's a project I want to get on the table. Sometimes it's a game design I would love to bring to life. But sooner or later, something has to give. So today, I want to talk about the prioritization I am working through as I decide how to spend the time I have in this hobby. This is the Tabletop Sportcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tabletop Sportcast. This is the podcast where we talk about tabletop sports gaming, replay gaming, and the projects, ideas, and passions that keep us coming back to the table. I'm your host, James Cast, and today it's episode 247. The title for today, Why Am I Choosing Gaming Right Now? I'm going to talk about this. It's a little bit more personal, and it really explains kind of where I am in the hobby right now. More specifically, why I'm choosing to prioritize playing games and creating content over designing games, at least in the current season. Like I said in the opener, ideas just never stop, and there's always this other concept that you want to chase. There's always a new projects you want to start. There's always other games that you want to build. But there's limited bandwidth, and eventually you have to make some tough decisions about where your time is best spent. So that's what we're going to get into today. Last episode 246, was Stop the Slop, and we talked all about AI, and I wanted to really clarify a couple of things. So first, obviously, and if you got a chance to see on my Facebook page, I use AI tools all the time. So that wasn't really meant to kind of bash AI tools. It really was more about setting that higher standard for yourself. And it was my own personal take to say, first and foremost, I'm going to set a higher standard for myself. And yes, I look around like Facebook, and even whether it's in our hobby or outside of our hobby, I'm just getting inundated with just junk that comes from AI. And we all see it, and we all see it every day. There's videos out there that are fake. There's text that's out there that's fake. There's images that are fake. And it's getting harder and harder to find real content because of all of the slop that exists everywhere. And so I do ask that people think about setting a little bit higher standard sometimes, but it starts with us as individuals. So for me personally, I'm going to try and hold myself to a higher bar first and foremost. But it doesn't mean I'm going to stop using AI tools, right? I do think that AI plays a critical role in what we do. I think there's some great uses for it, and I hope that everybody continues to play with it, figure out the best ways to utilize it. And in the long run, I do think it's going to make our lives, including in this hobby, a little bit better. So that's really what the idea of last episode was all about. But today, again, a little bit more of an introspective look. Prioritization is a tough thing, and we're going to talk all about what it involves, how you make those decisions. So we're going to touch a little bit on just in general how to prioritize, and then I'll put it in the context of some of my own personal prioritization as well. Before we get into today's main topic, let's take a look around the table. All right, today as we go around the table, I'm going to start first and foremost with the Play Nation podcast. We just launched our 5th episode, and it was another interview with Keith Avalone. We're trying to get Keith on once a month just to talk about some of the latest releases. And it's hard to believe that, he's gotten a few more sets out there. In this case, it was 2 primary releases that we covered. And you can go over and listen to that episode. But we did talk about the new College Hoops Playdown set, which I have really been enjoying playing with and been running a little tournament. And also the 2025 Pro Baseball season was released. So this was his second baseball release of the year already. As you know, last month we got Baseball America released. This is now the actual pro season, MLB, and two different versions as he's been doing the last couple of years. So hopefully you'll get a chance to check that out as well. I've already now ordered my version of Matchup College Basketball. Actually, it's not even college basketball, just basketball. And this particular one, I know Matchup, this is ST Patrick's Games, Matchup College Football, really did focus on college football. And I think eventually we're going to start to see some pro seasons coming for Matchup Football as well. But in this, with basketball release, ST has really chosen to go both paths. So I think by the end of this month, we should be starting to see some of the sets getting released. And they're going to be pro sets and college sets being released. So I've got my fact deck on its way, hoping to get that in the next couple of weeks. I would love to get it before IndyCon, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. But for the time being, just waiting on that. There's also another college football game that is about to get released or just got released. I think it might have just gotten released, which is for Fast Drive Football. We now have a fact version for the college football game that you can get on the Game Crafter. Should also mention Matchup Basketball also on the Game Crafter. So, yeah, there's some really exciting games that are coming out right now, and I'm all for it. I always like adding some more games to the collection. There were certainly a couple of games on the top of my list for this year. There's another one coming out next month as Play will release their Play at the Races, the boxed version. So I'll probably be looking to get that as well. So a lot of good things going on. IndyCon is coming up in just a couple of weeks. I will be there. So if you are attending IndyCon, I am committed to it. I will be there, hopefully arriving Friday morning and looking to spend the day Friday and Saturday there before starting my way back home. I'm probably either Saturday night or Sunday. I can't remember which time I'm going to leave, but I have to double check my plans there. But that's my plan, is to get a couple days in there, and really looking forward to that. Haven't yet decided about Digital to Dice Con. It had been a no for a while. Haven't really bought my ticket or made any plans, but some plans are changing, and I might actually be making it. So right now, it's a coin flip for me on Digital to Dice as I look at some of the events that I plan on doing this year. So more to come on that front. Hopefully, I'll be able to make that decision in the next week or so. So probably by next week's episode, I might have a little bit of an update for you as far as that goes. Highlights from my table. Got a chance to play Game 4 of the 1981-82 Stanley Cup playoffs for the 81-82 NHL co-op that we've been running. And yeah, we're in the final. It just wrapped up yesterday. So coming into Game 4, Edmonton was up 2-1. I was playing Game 4. It was the New York Islanders, Edmonton Oilers. New York was at Edmonton for Game 4, so Edmonton had a really good chance to get out in front there. My game unfolded really interestingly. Edmonton started really strong, scored 2 quick goals in the first 2 segments of the game, and I was playing this with Hockey Blast, so they got 2 goals right out of the gate. Now, the way I usually do my rotations is the home team gets a chance to go with a double line shift right out of the gate, keep their best line out there twice. Then each team, when they come around again, is able to do a skip of their 4th scoring line to get their number 1 scoring line back out. They get to do that twice in each period. And then towards the end, the visiting team will get a chance to do their double shift, provided that they still have that opportunity. And that really will come into where the lulls will take place. Second period, I usually flip it where the visitors get it. And then in the third period, I go back to the home team getting to start with the double line shift. So Edmonton took advantage of that right away. 2 quick goals. First period ends, they're still up 2-0. Islanders come back. They get a goal in the second period fairly early. Rest of the period goes pretty smoothly. Both teams trading off penalties. I had 1 fight in the game, a couple of majors. Going to the third period, it's a 2-1 game. It's looking pretty good, right? It's like a really competitive game. I'm feeling really good with the game at that point. And both teams are with their backup goalies at this point. It's Melanson against Lowe. Opening of the third period sees Gretzky put one home. They're now up 3-1, and it's not looking good for the Isles. And in fact, they follow that up with a number of lulls. I think I had 2 or 3 lulls after that. And then the Islanders pick up a penalty. So Edmonton goes on the power play about halfway through the third period, up 3-1. And I'm thinking, this is not good. The Islanders are going to have to fight off this penalty and then really try to make like a late run here to get a couple of goals. Well, sure enough, that power play, the Islanders come up with a shorthanded goal. Now it's 3-2. Islanders pick up another penalty. Edmonton goes in the power play. Isles kill it. We're getting into like the final few minutes of the game. There's about 4 or 5 minutes left. And with 3 minutes to go, it's still a 3-2 game. I think I had another lull in there that pushed us like pretty close to the end of the game now. Excuse me. So here we are, 3-2. 3 minutes to go. I'm trying to decide now, does Al Arbor, the Isles coach, should he be pulling his goalie at this point? Well, they got their top scoring line getting ready for a double shift. And I think to myself, like, yeah, maybe not yet, right? Like maybe they'll just stay here for another shot here. So I let it roll. I just let it ride with the third scoring line, and they get an attack. The Islanders get an attack, and Bob Bourne is able to get a rebound goal, puts it home. We're tied at 3. Now I'm not as worried about pulling the goalie, and the Isles decide to use their double to keep their top defensive line out and join them with their top scoring line for the final minute. Meanwhile, we're in the same boat for Edmonton. They're basically like we got both teams pretty much with their best lines out there. Islanders get set up for a scoring opportunity. No, actually, they don't get a scoring opportunity. They get possession in the final minute, and it's a spectacular save chance. So Lowe has to make a spectacular save against Bossy, and he is unable to. Bossy scores, and they take a 4-3 lead. 4-3 lead, and that's how the game ends. So it is a win for the Islanders. They even the series 2 games apiece, and then the rest of the series plays out. We end up going to a 7th game. Now, I was done playing games. I think Joe Cards actually ended up getting the final game, Game 7, and it went to overtime. Islanders win it in overtime and raise the cup, just like they did in 81-82. Now, they had not faced Edmonton in the finals that year, but obviously that Edmonton team was just a dominant scoring force with the likes of like and Coffey and Gretzky and Messier, just like a dominating team. But they came up just a little bit short. Islanders take it, and they win it. So that was the highlight, a combined highlight. Great project. Really enjoyed it. They have just kicked off the next hockey project, which is 1993-94 season. Really excited for that one as a New York Rangers fan, because that was obviously our last time that we won the cup. So looking forward to seeing that one play out as well. Let's see what else from around the table. I think that's about it. So yeah, great job from Andy Sexton and Joe Cards kind of running that co-op. I've really had a lot of fun with it. I'll probably be in and out with the 93-94 one, just like I have for almost all the other ones. And, you know, like I said, it's a great reason to get hockey on the table. I think I've got the 93-94 set for a couple of different games, so I'll probably take advantage of that. I'll probably start with some of the quicker play games initially, and then work in sometime full play games here and there. That's how I like to approach those co-ops a little bit. All right. Yeah, we'll come back now and talk about today's main topic. All right, so let's kind of get an idea first and foremost, like where I am from a prioritization standpoint. There are a number of avenues in this hobby that I am really enjoying right now. I think it's pretty clear. Gaming is one of those, right? I love getting these games on the table. I love setting up projects and just kind of cranking them out. And, you know, when I say cranking them out, I don't want to make it sound like I just do it for the sake of doing it, right? Like I really am enjoying the moment with the games. Mostly like to do full play, but I do mix in some quicker play games from time to time just to kind of get a feel for a set. Sometimes if it's a set I'm not 100% sold on, like, am I going to enjoy this set? I'm not sure. It sets up well for like a nice quick play. And then I can sometimes tell from that, like, especially with a lot of the tournaments that I like to run, do I think I'm going to want to do something more with this set or not? Usually that's how I kind of make some decisions about it. So gaming, definitely something I'm enjoying. Then we get to content creation. Well, this year, obviously, not only continuing with this podcast, but now have signed up for a second podcast. And it's a major time demand. This one, the second one, the Play Nation, we definitely decided to only do 2 episodes a month, which makes it a little bit more manageable for me. And honestly, I'm not sure I would have been able to do it at 4 episodes a month. I think it would have been just a little too difficult at that point. But signed up for the second one. Also continuing to do some content creation for Sports Sim Magazine. I usually try to contribute an article or 2 to their quarterly issues. So that becomes another thing that I'm trying to do. And then you get into game design, which has been something I've been wanting to pursue. And the more I talk to other game designers and I see the amount of time commitment that they make to it, I realize that I'm going to have to make some choices. And I see those same choices being made by a lot of game designers. They typically have to decide, am I playing games or am I creating games? And for them, in the moment, right now, it feels like something that they want to be creating the games. Now, obviously, in that, they have to do a lot of play testing. So they are playing games, but they don't dedicate their time to the kind of recreational side of the game playing, right? They're not getting a lot of different games on their table. They're pretty much playing 1 game, maybe 2, as they're designing them, trying to work through the kinks, trying to do all that play testing. Maybe they have some other people helping out too, but they really have to do a lot of playing of that particular game to make sure the mechanics are right. And I think that's the part that I have been struggling with and finally decided it was time to make some decisions about things. Over the last couple of years, I've also been wanting to do more with YouTube, and that has always been a struggle for me. And then I think I just had to finally kind of have that realization conversation that you're not going to be able to do all these things. And why is that? Well, it's because of like when you look at the way your time is built, and there's a great video out there that talks about prioritization and how to really decide what's important. It's this college professor, and he talks about, he has like a glass and he puts in some big rocks, then he puts in some smaller rocks, then he puts in some sand. And every time you think that glass looks full, but he keeps getting more stuff in there. And then he finally pours some liquid in, which just kind of fills in all the empty spaces. And there's lots of time for things. But what he says is you've got to decide to do the things that are more important, because if you do it in that order, the boulders, the big rocks, the sand, and then the liquid, it works. You can find the time for it because you're prioritizing the right things at the right time. But if you start it the opposite way, if you fill that cup with liquid first and then try to get the sand in, stuff's going to be all over the place. If you can get both of those in there, then when you put the rocks in, there's no room for them. And there's certainly no room for the boulders. You have to do things in the right order. So what are those big rocks for me? Well, first and foremost, before anything happens with this hobby, right, I have to make sure everything in life is being taken care of first. Family and work, and kind of like making sure that everything related to those things. I got to make sure that the house is in good shape. I've got to make sure the yard's in good shape. I've got to make sure the car's in good shape, right? Like all of these other things. Got to manage my finances. All of these things that are part of kind of running life, like those are the big rocks. I got to take care of those first. Well, that takes a big portion of my life right there. After that, you start to decide what are the other things that you want to do. Now for me, and there are other things that I like doing too, right? And I have to pick and choose them a little bit. There are things that I like to do to relax, listen to music, listen to podcasts. I like to listen to audiobooks. I love to listen to, watch movies and some TV shows, sporting events. And then there's this hobby. So I find time for a lot of the different things. And then I find time for the hobby. And I will say the hobby especially the game playing right now and the content creation, it has a pretty good routine around it. Like, I feel like right now I have a pretty good understanding of when I'm dedicating time to those different activities. But as I want to layer more stuff in, I realize there's not really enough time to do all of it. So I have to choose, because I am starting to hit that cap and there's only so much time to give. So why do I choose gaming? I choose the gaming right now over the game design just because I know, like, if I really want to get into game design, I'm going to have to make some other choices about what things I need to give up, because it does require a lot of like heads down time to really ideate, to really work through those brainstorming activities and do all the problem solving that is really required to actually create a game the right way. The bar that I'm going to set for myself in terms of game designing is not something that's going to be achieved lightly. And the more I challenge myself, and the more I look at how my time is being spent, I feel pretty comfortable with the decisions that I'm making about saying, YouTube's not going to happen. I'm okay with that. Game design is going to have to take a back seat. There will be pockets of moments where I can get away from everything, take a vacation, maybe choose not to do some game playing, and actually work on some idea around game design. But it's going to be a slow process, and it's not something that I'm going to dedicate myself to kind of trying to like get things out there. So it's going to wait a little bit. In the meantime, I have chosen at this point in time that in addition to just getting games on the table and playing through them and working through the projects that I want to do, that the content creation, the podcasts, both of them, and even writing for Sports Sim Magazine, those are the things that are going to take a priority. Because I can work in those other elements fairly easily into my schedule because I've got routines already built around them. And if you're used to doing things in routines, you know that bringing on new routines is usually difficult and it can be disruptive. And sometimes that's a good thing, right? Sometimes that disruption is a good thing. But the more I talk to other people in the hobby and I listen to what they're going through, I hear the same kind of decisions being made by folks. And I think that's where a good discussion around how to do the prioritization can be really helpful. Now, we've done this in the past, but I think it's a good time to kind of bring it back up again to talk about prioritization. And there is a really simple exercise that you can go through. And a lot of you are probably familiar with it, but I'm going to mention it again because I do think it's a really good tool for people to have at their disposal and really think in terms of like, how do I go about prioritizing things, especially when it comes to like my hobby and stuff. Well, I always talk about things like t-shirt size when it comes to projects, but what I'm really trying to do is get into two things. And there's this nice like 4-box, 2-scale prioritization matrix that you can build where you weigh the effort of doing something versus the value it can deliver. Effort versus value. Rate both things in just two categories. Is it high or is it low? Whenever you're trying to grade things, the fewer variables you can introduce to it, the better, because it forces you to make decisions. Yes, I could go to high, medium, and low, but as soon as I do that, it blurs the edges a little bit more. Now, instead of just having one blurred line, something that's right in the middle between high and low, I'm forced to decide which way it goes. But as soon as I introduce that third thing, high, medium, and low, now I've got two blurry lines. And now I have to decide between medium and high, what happens to those items, and then what happens between medium and low. So simplifying your grading scale, the more you can do it. A lot of people like to say like, oh, I'll just rate things on a scale of like 1 to 5. Yeah, but every one of those creates more blurry lines. So keep it nice and simple for yourself and just use two variables, high and low, on both sides of that matrix. High effort, low effort. High value, low value. And when you do that, you're going to get 4 boxes. I'm going to walk through this without any visualizations, right? But you'll be able to stick with me. What are the ones that are your quick wins? It's the ones that are going to deliver high value with low effort. If you can get a lot of enjoyment out of something, and it doesn't take you a lot to work through it, that's a quick win. Those are the ones you want to go after every single time. Prioritize those items because you can get a lot of those done. They're usually hard to find. It's usually hard to get high value from low effort. But if you design projects the right way, I think you can get there pretty easily. That's your quick wins. The other one that sounds like a good win, and it is to a degree, right, is high effort, high value. You might say, but I love that idea of doing like a full baseball replay. Like, oh, I want to play the entire season. I would love to do that. It's my favorite baseball season. I would love to do that. And you know what? You can. But you have to frame it up as understanding that means, yes, you're going to get high value, but you also have to exert high effort. And when you have to put high into both categories, it generally is the things that, yes, you're going to need to do, but understand the commitment that it's going to cost you. Now we move into like the low value portions, right? If you have low value, but low effort, those are typically the things that you just kind of have to get done from time to time, right? They start to be like those run the engine tasks that you have to do, things that are just required from you. And in a minute, I'm going to give you some examples to show you where these kind of fit in. And then the last one is where you've got low value and high effort. And those are the things that you should always say no to. Because why, right? And if you have the right structure, you can say, you know what, those are things I want to delegate to others, right? So what are some examples that kind of fit into there? Well, if you have the right size project and it can give you a lot of value, those are the things that are going to fall into that high value, low effort. When I think about some of the projects that I've been running recently, I took on when I do tournaments, for instance, it gives me a chance to see all the teams that take part in a particular season. Maybe I only see them once, but I at least feel like I'm seeing them on the table. And I get a lot of enjoyment out of seeing like that tournament playthrough, right? Tournaments are fun. It's just fun playing through like a single elimination tournament or a gauntlet or something along those lines, right? And for me, like I can size a project to either that small or sometimes even that medium size and feel like it falls into the right framework to say, okay, the effort is still on the lower side and I'm getting high value from it. Like those are the projects that I will sign up for every single time. And it's why most of the projects that I do are going to be in that small or medium sized bucket. And usually when I go after a medium sized project, I want to make sure it's with a game that is going to be easy for me to get on the table. I don't have to think a lot about the rules and it's a quick setup. It just lets me kind of get into the moment really quickly. Yes, there will sometimes be some of like the quicker play kind of, versions of games, even though I wouldn't say that they're necessarily express games, but because, express games for me don't deliver a lot of value, right? I want to have more of a full play game, but there are some games that are express like that I still feel like, capture it and give me enough of a narrative that I feel like I can play those kinds of games. And there are some express games that I actually enjoy more than full play games, like Highlight Maker Hoops, for instance, where I'm not heavily invested into playing like full play basketball games. Even though I've been doing them recently and I do enjoy it, I get just as much enjoyment out of doing like kind of a highlight version of basketball or a highlight version of hockey or soccer. There are versions of those games that I do enjoy. So if I can do that, that works out great. That helps me find a project. Small and medium sized projects can be in that low effort, high value category. I mentioned one example, and yeah, I've done full season replays. Sometimes I try to do those with more express games to make them a little bit more manageable, but they still fall into that high category. High value, high effort. And even when it gets into high effort, it takes away a little bit from the value of it too. It doesn't feel as valuable when you have to put that much effort into it. One of the things that I love about doing co-ops with other folks is I feel like we can deliver a high value together. We can get to, like we did with this 81-82 NHL season. I mean, if I was to do that by myself, it would take years to get through that project. Well, we got through it in about, a little bit less than a year. I want to say it was shortly after like Digital to Dice last year that they kicked that project off. And here we are finishing it in like March. So it probably took like 9, maybe 10 months to play that entire season out. That's doable. And overall, I probably played, I don't even know how many games, 15, 20. Well, I probably could figure out how many games. But, say I played maybe 15 or 20 games throughout that entire project. So for me, the effort shifted and I still got that same value. So I was able to take something that was a high and probably move it into the high-low category where I got the high value, but my effort was on the lower side. One of the things that, as I mentioned, you can be in a position for is what about delegating things? Well, that's kind of what you do in a co-op. You kind of delegate some of the responsibility to others. So instead of me playing out all of the games for an entire hockey season or entire football season or entire baseball season, in a co-op, you get to share that workload. And that helps you shift it from high effort to low effort. That's a really good thing to be able to do because that puts it in from that got to do it to that quick win, And that's a really good place to be. You want to be in that quick win kind of place. So what are those things that fall into like the low value and low effort category? Well, it's all those things that you have to do to actually be able to take part in the hobby. Maybe it's printing out card sets, or maybe it's you got a card set delivered and you got to break it down or sort the cards or do all those kinds of things, right? It's all the stuff you have to do to kind of get set up. Maybe it's like handling the storage of your games or handling the storage of your card sets, making sure you have the right dice or the right markers. How are you handling score sheets? Like all of those things are kind of those run the engine tasks that we have to do. And they fall into that like on a low value, right? We don't get a lot of value from them. Yeah, it's fun breaking down a card set, but there's not a lot of value there. So it's in the low value, but it's also not a lot of work. Some of the card sets are a little bit more than others, but even still, like maybe it takes me a couple days to break down when I do a little bit here, a little bit there. It's still doable, So low value, low effort, that's your run the engine stuff. And like I said, you have to say no to the things that start to get into that low value and high effort category. So for me, all of the activities that I mentioned at the top of this, main topic, game playing, content creation, game creation, those to me are all high value activities. I get a lot of enjoyment out of all three of those. But for me right now, at least, game creation moves into that high effort category. So yeah, I want to get to it, but it means I have to be able to figure out when do I have the time to do that? Even though it's high value, it's in the high effort category. It can't be a top priority. Game playing for me, because of the way I set up my projects, typically is something that's going to fall into the quick win category. I can move those over there because I get high value from it and the effort isn't great. Yes, there's a lot of effort that goes in, but each one of those things that I deliver gets to deliver value, and I don't feel like I'm ever putting in a ton of effort into it. And the times that it starts to move where I start to feel it creeping into the high effort is usually when I abandon projects. Because as soon as a project starts to feel like, wow, this is going to be a lot more work than I originally had signed up for, it's time to cut it loose and time to deprioritize it. And so it's okay to abandon projects from time to time. I do it often enough, right? And a place that I fall victim to it more often than not is when I'm trying to set up wrestling federations. That's usually where I find I struggle because they constantly start to get bigger and bigger and bigger and out of control. It's a lot easier to control things when you know how big a season is and you know how many games you're going to play going into it. It's a little easier to size those up a little bit better, and I can usually pick the number that feels right to me. And the enjoyment that you get from a particular game is going to make it where it feels like less effort than high effort. Yeah, somebody might look at me playing 162 games of History Maker Baseball with one season and be like, that sounds like high effort. And they're probably right. It probably is. But it doesn't feel like as much effort for me because it's a game I really enjoy, and we all have those. And I find the setup not that difficult. And it's just one that I constantly am willing to go back to, right? So that probably puts it in that medium effort category, and then I can kind of slide it one way or the other. Same with content creation. There are times where it feels like it's high effort. And there are times where I wouldn't say it feels like low value, but it doesn't, when you get stuck, I think is when it starts to feel like it drains a little bit of the value out of it. And I don't know if that's because the value isn't there or just because the effort is difficult to get through. So there are times where content creation moves into that high category as well. But more often than not, I have a pretty good routine around it, right? And routines make it easier to deliver things. But yeah, game creation for me is going to be a high. And it's because I don't really have a good rhythm, a good routine around how to approach it. So for me, it means kind of stopping everything and being able to really focus on it. And when something is new to you, it does force you to spend more time focusing on it, which increases the amount of effort that you have to put in. And anybody who's tried to learn something new knows that's probably true. When you learn new things, it requires a lot more effort than the things you already know and the things you can move into. Take a new game, for instance. When you get a game for the first time, those first couple plays are like a little bit more of a slog, right? Because you are constantly looking back at the rules, constantly making mistakes, and it just becomes a little bit draining. You work through them, and sometimes you can work through them really quickly, and some games are really easy to pick up. But some of them aren't, and the ones that are more difficult or more complex, they're going to require more effort from you. And so you have to make prioritization decisions when you go through those things too. So yeah, I think that's kind of where it is. And that's why those are the exercises that I've been going through. And the tighter your time schedule gets, the more important it becomes for you to start making prioritization decisions. When we have all the free time in the world, which I'm hoping to have at some point in the future, right? I'll be able to retire from work. My kids will grow up. I'll have more time available to me, right? And I'll be able to take on some more of these other activities in life. And I do and hope to continually invest into this hobby. I don't see this being anything other than a lifelong hobby for me because I really do enjoy it. I enjoy the people I meet through it. It gives me a lot of value. The question is, how much effort can it take right now? And there are parts of it that I can do which are not really effortless, but that I feel like with the time that I have available, I can dedicate it to those activities. Game playing, content creation. But getting into something new like YouTube, not going to happen right now for me. And I'm finally ready to declare that and say, I think coming into this year, I knew that was going to be the case. I was finally going to say, I'm not even going to worry about it. Just not something that's going to happen. I was still trying to hold on to game creation though. And I think that now I finally have reached a place where I've said, you know what? That needs to take a back seat too. And so it will. So we'll give game creation a little bit on the back shelf, back burner. It's moving into that high category where I can say at some point, maybe I'll be able to chip away at it. But that time is not now. And it's not because the value isn't there. I really do think the value for me will be there. It's just got to be at the right season of my life. And right now is not that time. All right, let's come back and wrap up today's episode. So that's kind of a look into how I'm approaching the hobby right now. And yeah, it's tough when you have to make tougher decisions. And we all do it. We all do it all the time. We have those projects. Like I said, this idea of ideation, if you're like me, you're just constantly coming up with ideas. Oh, this would be a great project, or that would be a great article to write, or well, that would be a really good podcast episode. But finding the time for all these things is the part that gets difficult. And so I think when the opportunity came about to do Play Nation, that was the decision I was making. If I do this, what am I giving up? Wasn't going to give up Tabletop Sportcast. Talked to the guys, talked to Al and Harvey about that. That wasn't something I was ready to do. So that wasn't going to happen. Didn't think I was going to need to give up writing for sports and magazines. That was a decision I was like, okay, I think I can still do that. The thing that I realized was, one, YouTube came off the table quickly, and it was actually a relief because I was struggling with it anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. I still was hoping to go after some game design, but I knew it was in jeopardy. And here we are, just a couple months into the new effort with Play Nation. And yeah, I think game creation takes a back seat right now. But it's a decision that I'm okay with at this point in time. Because like I said, you have to evaluate everything in the season, in the moment, and say, well, how does the prioritization work right now? And for me, limited bandwidth. And, I will add to it, like, home life has gotten a little bit more, I wouldn't say harder, because it isn't harder. It's just there's more demands right now. And work has been more demanding right now. And so those being the big boulders, right? Those being the big things that need to be taken care of first and foremost, that starts to eat into time for the other things too. And so you're forced to make those decisions. When you have lots of free time, it's easy to say there's always going to be time for something else. And there is still time for other things too, but I have to make the harder decisions sometimes about how you want to spend your time. And so that's what it came down to for me. I made those decisions. I'd set my own priorities. And I had to look at that and say, am I okay with this? And the answer was yes. And that's what you'll have to do as well. All right, we are coming up. This was the last episode of, not technically the last episode of March, but here's how I've kind of broken up my calendar, right? I'm trying to, last couple of years, I've built my calendar around each month and said, okay, well, the way the month falls. But this year I wanted to make sure, like, as I looked at a month, like for instance, this month sees 3 days in March that actually are combined into the same week as 4 days in April. So I really moved those 3 days to April. So the way my year has gone so far is I had 4 weeks in January, 4 weeks in February, and I'll have 5 weeks in April. And that's typically how you'll go through a quarter. You have 13 weeks, right? That's how you get to your 52. 13 weeks in each quarter. So for me, April's a 5-week quarter. A 5-week month. And I'm actually bringing the first 2 days of May are actually part of my April plan, which I'll probably post by, later this week. Now, I talked about prioritization. I will also say, you probably haven't heard an interview on the podcast for a little while. My last interview, was probably back in February. Haven't had time to do an interview yet this month. And that was one of the things I had to prioritize. I knew I was going to have to back away from that just a little bit, just because there's been a lot going on this month. Next month, we'll get back to doing interviews again. I'm bringing them back. I'll have at least one next month, as well as probably the way things are lining up right now, next month, episode 250, getting really close to it. This is episode 247. So episode 250 is going to be while I'm at IndieCon. So we're going to do a live event for number 250 from IndieCon. Trying to work out the details for that, but hoping to be able to give you some live broadcasting from IndieCon for the podcast. But next week, we're going to kick off Q2 with the spring show. We are officially in spring now. It's time for our next seasonal one. And we're going to take a look back at what happened throughout quarter one, our winter season, and what I've got planned for Q2. The spring season. So we'll do all that next week. But until then, thanks for listening.